Welcome back to WaterparkRanger's Let's Play Kingdom Hearts. In the last episode, we retrieved the Crystal Triton from the sunken ship with the help of our dolphin buddy. Unfortunately, we were attacked by a shark on our way back, whose name I can't remember, and shortly after that, King Triton destroyed the Crystal Triton that we'd retrieved, basically making everything we did last episode 100% worthless. Anyway, what's going to happen this episode is we're going to have to find our way into Ursula's lair. Now, because I know this episode's going to, number one, go on for a long time, and number two, not have much of a point for most of it, I'm figuring that I'm going to actually explain what we're going to do in it now. That way I can talk more continuously about something after I'm done with the explanation. Because there has been something that I've been meaning to explain for a while in these videos, or just for this one particularly, because nothing important is going to happen for this long episode. And I mean, if you really want, I guess you could skip this one, but I mean, if you've watched this far, you might as well see what it's like to suffer through Atlantica. I'm not going to be bitching about it the whole time. I've decided that that would just be too annoying, so I've thought of other things to talk about that I have wanted to mention for a long time. Anyway, first things first, I will just explain the general game plan of this area, of this episode. We're going to go over to the palace. There's going to be a cutscene. Shortly after that, we're going to have to find our way to Ursula's lair. There's going to be a lot of fighting on our way there because we're going to run into a lot of enemies to grind. Because, of course, we do want to keep our level up nice and healthy, even if this is only easy. It's better than to be too weak and really have a tough time with enemies later on. I'd rather us be at an appropriate level, especially for the boss of this world. It's pretty important to be a good level for this boss, in addition to having good offense. But next episode will be all about bosses, so we'll talk about bosses when the time comes. Anyway, the basic idea is that we're going to be finding our way to Ursula's palace. The only difference in the plan is that, number one, well, actually, things that are the same is you're just going to have to take the dolphin, as usual, back to that same area with the sunken ship. Only this time, Sebastian will be with you, and, yeah, Sebastian the crab. So he'll be able to open a new passageway further into the area by hitting that little switch that we weren't able to reach ourselves last episode. That's really all that little thing behind the ship was there for. Then you just follow it through to the end, and prepare to take on the boss of the world. It's really quite simple. Other things that are worth mentioning is that there was a Heartless we just fought not too long ago, just maybe 30 seconds. It looked like a giant anglerfish. I forget exactly what its official name is, because I'm a horrible person that way. But the basic idea of it is that it's kind of dangerous. It has a lot of HP compared to other enemies, maybe a bit more in the sheltering zone. Oh, it's called the Aqua Tank. That's what it's called, Aqua Tank. And it'll rush at you, and also I think it has a lightning bolt attack. Of course, I always am sure to kill off pretty quickly because I don't want it doing big damage to my party. I mean, there's no point in that. In addition, I think those little green guys, who I still think are called screwdrivers for whatever reason, as stupid as a name that is, they kind of congregate around those Aqua Tanks, sort of like remoras attached to the bottom of, I think, whales or sharks or whatever it is they do. And so, the Aqua Tank can launch screwdrivers into battle at you, which makes it literally quite like a tank, because it shoots, it has smaller soldiers in store. So it's kind of an interesting enemy. It's not very common, fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how much you like your cool but dangerous enemies. And we may run into the shark again, I'm not really sure. I think it's a random chance still. So, that's the explanation of what was going to happen. This episode, meaning that I can spend more or less the rest of it talking about something that I meant to get discussing a long time ago. So, here goes. Whether or not you noticed them, I've made some sporadic references throughout my older videos to a website called MS Paint Adventures, specifically the story Homestuck on that website. This probably started off sometime around when I was doing my Wind Waker LP, because that's when I started reading it. If you didn't know, one series that doesn't particularly have to do with gaming that I also enjoy is One Piece, and I've made a few references to that in past episodes as well. I think from as far back as my first LP, Chamber of Secrets. One Piece, though, is actually pretty well known in the big scheme of things, and even if you never necessarily watched any part of the show or read the original manga, you get a pretty good idea of what it's about just by looking at a short clip or even a picture. It's a story about pirates, basically, with a very colorful and downright bizarre sort of flair. So I never really felt the need to explain it in depth for any reason. MS Paint Adventures is a totally different case, though. In the big scheme of things, I still think it's mostly pretty obscure. And unlike something like One Piece, you really can't get a good idea of what it's about without getting into specific details. For instance, if you Google image search like MS Paint Adventures and scroll down even slightly, you find it pretty much impossible, I bet, to comprehend exactly what any of it meant. And I guess as with any Google image search, you might get some very misleading and potentially traumatizing results, but that's another story. Stay safe out there, everyone! MS Paint Adventures is pretty awesome, but I think it could really use some explaining beforehand if you ever want to check it out. And lucky you, there's nothing of importance happening in this video, so you can at least rely on this commentary to fully explain and recommend something far more worth your time than Sora being a freaky fish guy. I should first of all mention that viewer discretion is advised for MS Paint Adventures, as there's plenty of stuff that would qualify as mature content as per ESRB standards in these stories. Anyway, there are 4 different stories on the site. All of them are written by the same guy, Andrew Hussey, and 3 out of the 4 stories were more or less entirely driven by reader input. Like, he'd open a suggestion box for where the story would go next each time. Anyway, I would qualify Problem Sleuth as worth checking out to see if you enjoy its style, but I would not recommend the first 2, Jailbreak or Bard Quest, because they're really just like simple, short experiments. They were the ones that were made first to kind of test out the format of the site. They're not necessarily good. But anyway, the last of the MS Paint Adventures, which ironically is the one that stopped using reader input shortly after it started, Homestuck. It's really different from the other comics on the website, because it's actually got a legitimate story to tell that goes way beyond just, like, Problem Sleuth's purely random humor. Anyway, because it's a story that has real weight to it, and like the other things I've mentioned, I don't want to spoil details, give stuff away beforehand. I really enjoyed, personally, finding out what was about, what it was about by reading through it from the start with no outside information at all. In terms of how it's set up, Homestuck uses the same progression from page to page that Problem Sleuth also uses, because for a webcomic, it's a little unusual. It's like 1 panel a page, sort of. But usually there can be a lot on each panel, especially in Homestuck. Oh, but there are some other additions to it as well, like, Problem Sleuth had some short animations, like for some of the battles and stuff, that had some animations. Homestuck's got some of those animations as well, though they're a bit more, they're a bit longer and more elaborate. Actually, some of them are very long. And there were also a few features added to it, like I remember a few bits where you could actually control some of the characters in Homestuck, and run around a few different locales and interact with the things you find. There's actually also an extensive amount of original music for the Flash pages. For the record, you can buy these tracks. I definitely think they're worth the money. I have a few of the volumes. One thing you do need to know about Homestuck, though, is that it's actually extremely text-heavy, especially for a webcomic. I cannot stress that enough. If you don't like reading, then Homestuck was never meant for you. There are some people out there that even go as far as to complain about the amount of text in a game, like, say, Paper Mario in the Thousand Year Door. I remember reading, like, a review. I think it might have been IGN that complained that there was too much text in the game. But the thing about a story where information is explained with a lot of written words is you kind of need to read it to understand what's going on. Especially when the plot's as long and convoluted as the one in Homestuck. It started in 2009, it's still not over yet. The story was divided into 7 acts, with a couple intermissions as well. Right now it's getting underway in the 6th act. But, as you know, for certain games, and like, chapter formats sometimes can be pretty misleading. Like, the 5th act in Homestuck, I think, is literally like half the story, so saying 6 out of 7 isn't so much of a good measurement, because who knows how long 6 or 7 could be. So anyway, that means there's still a lot of ground to cover before it's finally over, and because the story's not over yet, there's still a lot of questions that haven't been answered, like in regards to plot. Especially with a story of this kind of length, things are, there's going to be weird things that happen in the beginning that don't get explained until much later on. So I know that could probably frustrate some people who want answers to everything right away. So you just kind of have to be patient and look for clues along the way, and then you'll find those answers to the questions you had in the beginning. The final hurdle, and I think this is only the real detractor for getting into Homestuck properly, is that the beginning of the story can be really misleading. A lot of people find the start of the story, Act 1, to be really pointless and boring. There are a couple pages in Act 1 that I have to agree are pretty dull. So to help clear things up with Act 1 a little, the basic idea with the item/menu system is that it's obtuse and doesn't work, and it basically parodies crappy item and menu systems like the kind found in, say, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, specifically the remake for PS2 that was really awful. That's all you really need to know about it. The item alchemy system that they show later was pretty confusing to me, but all you really know about that is it works like any other alchemy system in video games. You use materials and items to make new materials and items. And also, can we open this thing? Oh, awesome! Bubbles. Orichalcum! Okay, it's pretty rare stuff. Though I'm pretty sure normal mythical chunks are a bit more rare than that. Anyway, so it all boils down to this. Pros of Homestuck. Fantastic plot, a great soundtrack, which is very weird to say for a webcomic. Definitely a unique sense of humor, some very entertaining and awesome characters. The characters and dialogue are probably its greatest strengths. And as for the cons, I mean, it's a matter of opinion, but it can get very confusing. There is a good wiki for it, but the problem is it's filled to the brim with spoilers, so until you ever catch up, I guess I would recommend staying away from it. There's plenty of characters that are supposed to kind of be kept a secret till later on. And the first act also doesn't hold people's attention very well, which is a shame because, you know, start of a story, first impressions are... Some people say first impressions are everything. Now, personally, I didn't mind the start of the story all that much, but I was kind of bored at the time when I was reading it, so I was able to get through it. Of course, I didn't regret it because it was completely awesome. Now, I don't even want to count the amount of text as a truly negative thing about it, because that's just personal preference. It's like giving a racing game a 0 just because you aren't fond of the genre. So that's what I was waiting to explain for a while, and I couldn't think of anything better than to lay it all down in an episode where absolutely nothing important happens. So the bottom line is, if the pros I mentioned outweigh the cons, then you absolutely have to start a Homestuck. It's a story with a derpy-looking kid over on MS Paint Adventures. I think it's like the standard homepage. And if for you the cons outweigh the pros, then look on the bright side. At least you get to anticipate next episode when we're going up against the boss of Atlantica, and then getting the hell out of this water world knockoff. Oh man, I guess I should probably get back to explaining things that we're doing right now, because now we're actually at a new place. You notice that we went into that cave, now we're in the Cavern Nook, and we've rearranged our items a bit, mainly because the items that you have are going to be pretty important for this boss. Definitely I would recommend having fire. It's a really strange boss battle with a weird design. You want to have a ton of potions that will... No, I mean ethers that will replenish your magic. That's honestly your major concern, is that you're probably going to run out of magic in this fight. I used to find this fight a lot more difficult, but now there's a strategy I found that can help me win it really easily, and I guess I'll show you that too. I also like this place back here. I think it looks pretty cool. I don't remember, in the actual movie of Little Mermaid, did Ursula's cavern really look like this? Oh, wow, just 2 search ghosts, really? That's like the best security Ursula could give, huh? And also down there, there's the poor unfortunate soul worms, or whatever those things are supposed to be. They look like something out of Dr. Seuss. Whatever, let's just go through there. We're gonna fight Ursula next episode. See you then.